Hi there, this is Alvin from Dr. Wealth. Happy holidays! We are coming to the end of the year and starting a good year ahead in 2024 for everyone. And we want to end the year with probably something that is more lighthearted, and I want to talk about malls, okay? Specifically, malls that are at MRT stations, right? Because holidays means that you're going to buy gifts, you're going to buy clothes for the new year, and probably you have been to malls for the past 1 week or so, right? And going forward, I think there will be more shopping to be done. So interestingly, I wanted to figure out what are some of the malls that are very close or even at the MRT exits, and hence I map out the entire MRT map based on the different lines, change the instead of using station names, I changed them to the mall names. Okay, so that is an exercise that I wanted to do to figure out, right, what are some of the stations or some are the owners behind all these malls. And of course, as investors, we would want to get a mall or invest in a mall that is definitely close to a station because it brings in the human traffic. And we know that these MRT lines are definitely the backbone of our Singapore public transport. It actually shapes our city, right? Because you move around, it affects how you travel, right, from different parts of Singapore to other parts. And they are a critical structure that drives our day-to-day activities. So these MRT malls are those malls that are close to these stations, basically. So this is a map that I redrawn, right? Not say I redrawn, I reworded them. I took out the stations that do not have any malls connected to them, and I replaced them with malls that are connected to the exits, okay, or at least close to the exits. So this is the rework of the map, and there is a post that you can refer to that I posted it on Dr. Wealth. That's where you can get a better resolution of the image as well. Later I'll blow it up for you. Okay, so that is the gist of things, and on the right side of the map, you will see I list down the owners of all these MRT malls. So altogether, there were 85 MRT malls that I could identify, right? Of course, there could be some subjectivity involved. Okay, why? Because it depends on how we define an MRT mall. So I based on two criteria. The first criteria, it must be big enough, right? Those kind of town center malls, right, which are generally more like a neighborhood focal point, right, with shops, with a bit more shops, but it is not really that full scale or what you would typically call a mall. Okay, so a lot of all these town centers are essentially built by HDB, managed by HDB, right? They are not exactly very commercialized as with a retail mall that's out there. Okay, so I exclude those, and that means that malls like Pioneer Mall has not been counted. And the second is that there are certain stations that have a lot of malls. Okay, for example, Orchard Station will have a lot of malls. The moment you walk out of that exit, you see like the whole road, the whole street is lined up with malls, and it's impossible to put it down for every single one of them. Hence, for such stations, I would only focus on those malls that have a direct connection to the MRTs. Okay? If not, I will just exclude them as well. Okay, so that is how I define them, and I ended up with 85 of them. And if you take a look at the map, this is where I'll blow it up for you, right? If you take a look at this map, okay, you will see that definitely in the city center, that's where the density of the shopping malls are being concentrated in. And the other peculiar things that I found was that you will start to see more malls at the outskirts of Singapore, right? At the ends of Singapore, at the ends of the MRT lines. And in between the city center and the ends of Singapore, you actually see less malls. Right? So that is something that's a pattern that I never really see, right? Except for the city center, right? The ends of the Singapore actually have quite a number of malls. And I believe that it's part of the process of decentralizing Singapore, not having everybody rush to the city center to shop, to work. Now you can shop even in your neighborhoods. So hence, there's more value, right, to put the malls at the ends of the Singapore. Okay, so that is what I gathered from this. And moving on, right? So as investors, definitely we can consider investing in some of these very premium properties. Okay, we find quite a number of malls that are close to this MRT, and they definitely have a much higher footfall compared to a mall that is not close to MRT station. So I also wanted to identify the owners of these 85 MRT malls, and this is the list of some of them, right? I'll focus on a few of them. So definitely the first one is CapitaLand Integrated Commercial Trust. I don't think this comes as a surprise for investors who are very familiar with REITs. This CICT is one of the most popular REITs. It's the first REIT that was listed on SGX. Of course, the previous name was Capital Mall Trust, and eventually they merged with the Capital Commercial Trust to form this CICT. So it has 11 MRT malls, okay, from the east, west, south, north, south, right? You also have the malls in the city center like Raffles City, Plaza Singapura, Funan, Bugis. They also have the Heartland malls, right? There's in the east would be Bedok, Tampines Mall. In the west would be like your Lot 1, right? In the north would be like Junction 8. So they have quite a number of these MRT malls dotted around the entire Singapore. So they are the ones with 11, the largest number of MRT mall in Singapore. Okay, so they are the owner of the largest number of MRT malls. And not only that, we also wanted to see whether there is any expansion potential, right? And the CICT sponsor is none other than CapitaLand Investment. And this CapitaLand Investment do have more high quality malls. For example, Jewel at Changi and Ion Orchard. These two are very famous malls that many tourists will visit and frequent whenever they're in Singapore. However, these malls are not 100% owned by the CapitaLand investment. So they are about half, right? The other half of Jewel belongs to Changi Airport Group. The other half of Ion belongs to Sun Hung Kai. And then Sengkang Grand Mall, the other 50% belongs to City Development. So you can see that when it is not 100% owned, is a bit more tricky because you need to get approval from all the shareholders. Both must agree in order for it to be sold to CICT, and of course the pricing and negotiation would have to be done accordingly as well, right? Not as easy as if there's just only one parent that you need to convince, right? So that is why I think that it might be a bit harder, right, for us to see CICT buying these properties, but it's not totally impossible, right? Because they can also buy over just the 50% share, right? Buy over from the parents and then leave the other 50% to the external party. That's also possible, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, especially with interest rates still on the higher side. But that is the pipeline that we can foresee. The next biggest MRT mall owner is Fraser Centrepoint Trust, or FCT in short. So they mainly have Heartland malls. They have 9 of them, right? And you can see that they don't have any one that is in the city center, right? All of them are at the Heartland areas. And so FCT sponsor, which is Fraser's property, does have a city center MRT mall, which is Orchard Centre Point. But this FCT does not have this right of first refusal, or ROFR in short, while CapitaLand Integrated Commercial Trust, CICT, has that ROFR for CapitaLand's properties. So it is likely that this Fraser property may or may not sell to FCT as a priority, right? Because other external bidders can buy directly without FCT's involvement. So that is what the ROFR means. But I don't think that this Orchard Centre Point is going to be sold to FCT, because if it is, it would have been included from day one when they did the REIT, when they spin off the REIT initially. And also because this FCT, the mandate seems a lot clearer, right? It's only gunning for the Heartland malls rather than the city center mall. So if you add this center point, it's a little bit off that mandate. So I think that is probably another reason why it is not in FCT's portfolio. And hence, we also start to see that Fraser property does not have many other retail malls, right? Especially close to MRT. Hence, the acquisition of additional mall by FCT has always been from external parties. For example, the most recent one is Next, which is owned by Mercatus, which is part of the NTUC group, and that was about 50% bought over by FCT. So it's from an external party rather than from the sponsor itself. And hence, the eventual more acquisition targets that's coming for FCT is also likely to be from external parties. And based on what I see, the rest of the MRT malls, it is likely that the single owner or one or two owners of a mall and it doesn't have a portfolio of them, it's more likely to sell to FCT, right? Because other REITs are not likely to sell the MRT malls to FCT. It's too precious, right? And that will make FCT more dominating in this space. Hence, I identify that potentially there could be East Point Mall owned by NTUC Income, Heartland Mall, Kovan, which is owned by Guthrie and MCS, and lastly Sun Plaza, which is owned by Cole Brothers. Okay, so these are potential acquisition targets that may or may not happen. The only thing that I think is because this FCT tends to focus more on the higher human traffic or higher footfall malls, MRT malls specifically, to put into portfolio, right? So some of these are a little bit less in terms of their scale that FCT might be looking for. Okay, it's very different from Next. Next is very, very high footfall traffic compared to say East Point, Kovan, or Sun Plaza. Right? So it may not even fit the scale that FCT is looking for, but potentially I think these are easier targets, right? Low-hanging fruits. And this special mention is Singapore Land. It is not a REIT, but it's a listed property company. It does have quite a number of good properties, especially MRT malls, right? They have 3 of them. First is Marina Square, second is Velocity at Novena Square, and third is West Mall, right? So these are quite, especially the first 2 are quite premium kind of a location. And the additional thing is that the parent, which is UOL, also own some retail malls, although they are not MRT malls. Like Kinex is not next to a MRT, right? It's further away. And then United Square Shopping Mall is close to Velocity, but it's not directly connected as well. Okay, so but they would make it like a good REIT, right? If they decided to spin off a REIT, they could form quite a credible one with 5 of these properties into a retail REIT in SGX, right? So potentially that can happen, but for longest time it has not happened, so I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, right? There might be some other considerations that we do not know that cause it not to be a retail REIT even today. And I also did another tabulation, which is the percentage of stations with malls. And if you stay on the along the northeast line, you're the luckiest because you have 71% of the station with a mall. 12 out of 17, right, of the stations have a mall. And if you're on the north-south line, it's not bad. You're second. You have 61%. More than half of the stations have a mall. And if you're on east-west line, it's about half. If your circle line is about 45%. Your downtown is 34%. And if you're Thomson East Coast line, unfortunately, it's at 18%. But it doesn't mean that you should stay northeast line or north-south line because of higher density of malls. We should flip it around, right? Because it is also likely that the newer lines have a lower number of malls, but that is the growth potential that we're looking at, right? Because there are likely new malls going to spring up around these new stations, and eventually I think that probably about half of the line, half of the stations would have a mall. Okay, because we look at the newer lines, right, like downtown, Thomson East Coast, these are the lower numbers. But you see the more matured ones tend to have a higher number of malls, and I think that Singapore eventually will have almost majority of the station will have a mall. So I think that the growth potential actually come from downtown and Thomson East line. So this is the extension that's going to happen for Thomson East Coast, right? So the Thomson line has been done. The East Coast side has not been, it's under construction now. And the East segment will add about 9 stations, but there's only one MRT station with a mall, and that's Parkway Parade, and which means the percentage will drop even further. And that also calls for more malls to be built for these new stations. And that is where I think even for some of you who are property hunters, maybe some of these newer stations can have more potential for amenities to be built. So in conclusion, we have 2 REITs that dominate the MRT malls, and this is not surprising because most investors will have known this, right? CICT and FCT own about 20 out of the 85 malls in Singapore. And not only that, they are the more prominent ones. They are the bigger ones, they're more high footfall ones. And I don't have the actual figures, but based on Pareto principle, right, this is what I believe, that although they own about 25% of the MRT malls, but I suspect their total rental revenue is more than 50% of all the revenue of these MRT malls combined. Okay, so that is based on Pareto principle inference, right? I don't have the actual figures, but that's what I think. And hence these two are de facto retail mall REIT that if anyone who's interested in investing in would have to look at these two. All right. To add on the differences is that CICT has office because they merge with the commercial trust, hence they also have office element. If you really want a pure play retail REIT, then FCT would be the only choice. And lastly, I mentioned about although the Thomson Nicholas line do not have a lot of MRT malls, but I believe that's where the potential is and that's where the growth area is. Okay, so hopefully you find this video interesting. Give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hope to see you in the next one, which will be the new year. Happy New Year to you. Goodbye.